Today's presentation from MJG Education is simply about IELTS speaking notes. Just a quick review of some things maybe you should know for Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 of your IELTS speaking test. So in Part 1, you always try and keep your answers short, 2 or 3 sentences, or if you're going to answer a question, maybe take 20 to 25 seconds to answer. That's about normal. The examiner has to ask you 8 to 12 questions in about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, it's a big problem for him if he can't get to that 8th question, because IDP, the British Council, and Cambridge, they're all very much worried about the reliability and the validity of their test. So if he can't get to the 7th question, it's not really a valid test. Okay? He has to get through 8 to 12. Usually this is in about 3 different topics. You know, they might ask you about your hometown or how you get to school every day or work or whatever you do, right? There's all kinds of topics there. They're all kind of personal, but they're easy to answer, and that's the key. You have to try and stay focused. Just answer the question, give a little bit of detail, and you're going to do just great. The biggest problem with this is people, it's a high anxiety test. It's high stakes for a lot of people. They have to pass this test because they're either immigrating or, you know, they want to get to a university, maybe in a foreign country. So it's a problem, and they're very worked up, and they've been waiting for this test, and then they get in there and they want to talk about everything. You know, I've had people where you just ask them, so where are you from? And it turns into, you know, and after high school, I went and studied chemistry at university, and after university, I got my first job. Like, they just keep going on and on and on. Don't do that. Just stay focused. It's no big deal. Part 1, you're not going to pass the test in Part 1, but the examiner will notice, you know, a few things about how you go about answering a question, of course, but it's just more or less a warm-up for you, okay? So don't stress Part 1. It's easy. Just let it flow. So as you know, your entire interview is being recorded by a small hand recorder. Now, it's not really important in Part 1. Part 1, it's more about the examiner's boss can listen to it to see if they've asked enough questions. But in Part 2, they also follow up on how long you're speaking for. So 3 things can happen to you. You're going to be given a task card. On the task card, there's 3 bullet points and maybe another 2 questions that you have to try and answer to in 2 minutes. Some people only speak for, let's say, 1 minute 20 seconds. And that's a problem because the examiner is told that he cannot speak to you for 1 minute and 31 seconds. If you pull up short at 1 minute 20 seconds, a good examiner will rotate his index fingers or his 2 hands to suggest, you know, keep speaking, get over 1 minute 31 seconds. The other type of examiner is told, and this is what they give you in the playbook, you look at the client in the eyes, and after 5 seconds you say, do you have anything else to add? Be aware, if you stop talking and the examiner is just looking at you, you better start talking again to get over that 1 minute 30 second threshold. You could, what is perfect is the second thing that could happen to you is if you finish between 1 minute 30 and let's say 1 minute 55 seconds, the examiner will ask you a follow-up question that's related to what you were saying. So let's say you were on a vacation. The examiner might ask you, you know, let's say Part 2 you were talking about a vacation. The examiner might ask you, so did everyone have a good time on your vacation? And you're just going to answer in a short, very curt way, oh yes, everyone had a great time. That's all you have to do. It's not an opportunity at this point to keep talking and extend your answer. That's not what it's about. This is a polite way to end Part 2. The third thing that can happen to you when you do a speaking test is you go over 2 minutes. It's not a problem if you've answered the 3 bullet points and any other questions on your task card. It's okay. Everybody does this. A lot of people go over 2 minutes. But what happens is the examiner, when you hit the 2 minute mark on his timer, he's just going to say, thank you very much. May I have my task card and pencil, please? That's the end of Part 2. Now, he does that while you're talking, and people think it's kind of rude. I know when I started doing this, I thought it was kind of rude too that I had to do it, but this is part of the test. You will be marked down if you don't answer to all the bullet points and the questions by 2 minutes. That's all you have to worry about. If you finish it off by 2 minutes and you go over, it's no big deal. Everyone's prepared for that. In Part 3, the examiner has to ask you 3 or 4 questions. Sometimes only 3, sometimes 4. There's usually 2 categories. You usually get 1 and 2 from one category and then 1 of the questions from the next category. If you answer quickly, you might get all 4 questions. There's 3 typical questions you're going to get in part 3. Try and think of everything in terms of 2. When they give you a what question, what are some of the major problems of blah, blah, blah? Always give 2 problems. Don't just say 1. They're asking you for plural. It's always plural. Give 2 answers. The why questions, always give 2 reasons. And finally, the yes or no questions. In this question in particular, try and get on both sides of the issue. If they ask you something about the environment, you say something good and then something negative about what's going on in the environment. The trouble with most people is that they're surface speakers, we call them. They just generally talk about everything, but they never give any depth to the conversation. For example, if a question comes up, what does a high society or a businesswoman wear when she crosses the streets? If you get asked something like that, lots of people just say, well, she'll wear a hat, a coat, maybe some boots, and always have a handbag. But what they want to hear from you is, oh, she'll be wearing a fur coat and a handbag, maybe by Gucci or Christian Dior. And that's what's important. Describe what you see. Be specific. Specificity is what gets you there. So use a lot of adjectives when you're describing things. And that really helps a lot with your score as well. Generally speaking, I will create more presentations for the individual parts 1, 2, and 3 for speaking. I just wanted to tell you that we do a lot of speaking tests on our website with individuals on either Zoom or Skype, whichever you prefer. And most everyone appreciates the feedback that you receive. You receive written feedback, but also you get the video, and there'll be some spoken feedback attached to that as well. So give us a call, give us a try, send us an email. Thank you. You can follow MJG Education on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Tumblr. We'll be updating that constantly, as with our homepage. We specialize in tutorials for the time being, as our website is being developed. So tutorials in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. We also do lots of mock tests that include feedback, oral feedback, if we do them through Zoom. And of course, you'll get feedback in a written form as well. We like to emphasize, too, that we're a Canadian company. You can save 35% if you're dealing with companies that charge you in US dollars. By all means, come back and check us out. We'll save you a fortune. Anyways, thank you very much and have a nice day wherever you are.